This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, whatever you're listening on. I'm Mike Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. My panelists tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King, Steelers Nation South, Rollo Coffin, and also from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Dion Reed. Welcome back, Dion. Good to see you. Our special guest tonight, we're joined by a former Michigan State University basketball guard, where he had just a fantastic senior year and a fantastic college career. But that senior year specifically, he started 28 games, averaged 13.6 points a game. After college, he went and played there in the Euro League, and he's got a documentary we're going to be talking about later that's coming out, and we'll have some big news for you on that. It's called "Weathering the Storm: The Story of Ray Weathers." So, like I said, we're going to get into that more when we get to our Q&A. But we're going to welcome to the show Ray Weathers. Ray, thank you for being here.
Oh, man, it's a humbling pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks for having me, and let's have some fun with this thing, and hopefully I can answer your questions correctly and real transparent, 100 and real, man. So thank you for that introduction. It's an honor to be a Spartan.
Yeah, and as you just mentioned, Spartans, tonight's debate is going to be the greatest men's basketball player for the Spartans, MSU. After Magic Johnson, we're not having Magic Johnson as part of this debate, so we're going to go from there. Our honorable mentions tonight for players that just missed the list. We got Greg Kelger and Draymond Green. So we're going to start out tonight with Brian.
All right, so I got my team Cleves, and he was highly touted out of high school. He was both a parade and McDonald's All-American. 6'2", 205 pounds. This guy was quick. He had nice touch on his passes, and he grew into an important leadership role for the Spartans. Cleves lived up to the hype. Even early on, he quickly became a starter in his freshman season of 96-97. He had a solid year, 10.2 points per game, 5 assists per game, averaged about 26 minutes per game, and he helped the Spartans get into the NIT. In his sophomore season, he improved a lot. His points per game jumped up to 16.1, assists to 7.2. He was named a second-team All-American and Big Ten Player of the Year, and he led the Spartans to a number 16 ranking and a trip to the Sweet 16. His junior season, he managed to reach even new heights. Again, he was Big Ten Player of the Year, but he was also able to elevate his game and earn a consensus first-team All-American honor. He led the conference in assists, was fourth in steals, and he had a really special Big Ten tournament, which catapulted the Spartans to number 1 seed in the Big Dance. Cleves then led his boys all the way to the Final Four before narrowly losing to Duke. Now, Mateen's senior season of 99-2000, that was when the magic truly happened. Again, he played at a level that earned him an All-American, despite missing a handful of games during the season. And again, in the Big Dance, he and the Spartans caught fire. He led them past Valpo, Utah, Syracuse, Iowa State, Wisconsin, and then put up 18 points in the championship game, win over the Florida Gators. So Mateen, he was given the Most Outstanding Player award for the Final Four, and he walked off the court a national champion.
So, Ray, I'm going to come to you now. The one stat that Brian left off there is the fact that Mateen has the most turnovers tonight of anybody we're talking about. So he didn't mention that one. But,
I wonder why.
Yeah, your thoughts on Mateen? He did bring home the national championship.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, I call him my rookie, my freshman when he came in. So we obviously shared the backcourt my senior year. I think it took a little time for us to gel, obviously, coming off the car injury for him. He was not 100% healthy his freshman year. And so that year, obviously, I felt like we really started to gel those last, I think, 10 to 12 games where we just missed the NCAA tournament. Big Ten play, I was averaging like 15.6. So my numbers went up once he got healthy because I was able to get the basketball and moving from point guard to shooting guard. So I don't know if you want to say, what else I feel about Mateen Cleves, but I feel like, honestly, he had a great team. He had, Morris Peterson's there with me, Antonio Smith. So you got to have the right pieces too. And I always say it's about the team, but I feel like he was a team guy and honestly, had a good career, good team, good run.
Okay. So let's move on to Rollo.
Steve Smith.
Huh.
Highland Park, Michigan. Wound up going to John J. Pershing High School in Detroit. where he's recruited by former NCAA coach that won a national championship, Judd Heathcote, and future Spartan great Tom Izzo. He said going to MSU to play guard to play basketball was good for him because he was a 6'7", he was 6'7", and he wanted to play guard. And Judd Heathcote had that with Irvin Magic Johnson, and that's who he mounted his game after. He started 28 games as a freshman, just averaged just under 11 points per game, but they only won 10 games. They improved the next year to 18 games under the Smith-led Spartans after taking over the starting role. They would improve to win 28 games and win the Big Ten title, and a Sweet 16 appearance where they lost to the Kenny Anderson-led Yellow Jackets in the Sweet 16, which was a very good game. The next year, they didn't fare as well. They only won 19 games, and they lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament. But Steve Smith led the Big Ten in scoring at 25.1 points per game, and he was named consensus All-American. He would finish All Big Ten twice, consensus All-American once, and he was the fourth in he would wind up being fourth all time in MSU history in field goal attempts, points per game, and seventh career in points per game. And until Sean Respert took over he was the all-time leading scorer in Michigan State history.
So, Ray, let me ask you, with Steve getting to play quite a bit of time when he was a freshman, how does that help develop a player's career when they're getting a lot of time as a freshman and going forward for the next 3 years they're going to be there?
Well, it's really important, especially I was fortunate. Obviously, I'm a Judd Heathcote guy first. Judd recruited me. So for Judd to trust you as a freshman, that was kind of like not the norm from him outside of Magic Johnson to come in and be thrown into the fire. So that tells you a lot about, obviously the coach trusting you, especially at, playing the point guard, primary position. So I think it kind of gets your feet wet. Obviously to me, I could be biased, but the Big Ten has been the best conference in America for many years, along with the ACC. So, I said anybody can average 10 points in the Big Ten back in our era was an extremely talented player. So for him, I think it's really important because you get that confidence going into your sophomore year. So you kind of know the expectations. Plus, honestly, you were entrusted with a key role. So Steve Smith is the reason why I went to Michigan State. So that's my guy. So I could tell you stories for days, but Steve Smith is definitely an elite guy. He used to come play with me one-on-one closed doors when he was the starting point guard for Atlanta Hawks. So that's my guy. Steve was a tremendous player.
And probably the best NBA career we're talking about tonight. I mean, Scott Skiles had a decent career, but I think Steve Smith hasn't beaten the NBA there. So
Steve don't get enough credit, man. I mean, Steve, he changed the game. Obviously, coming in as a big true point guard. And actually, he was 6'8" legit when I saw him. So, again, Steve Smith, when you talk about his pro career, I mean, this guy's one of the top, 10 players, top 15 players in the league, especially with the Hawks, for sure.
His shot off the dribble was fantastic, too. I mean, the guy he had everything. So
he has his own move named after him, guys, called the Smitty move.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to Sean Respert, and that is going to be represented by me here. We can end this debate right now because I've got the GOAT, guys. Okay, let's. So started out there in the 90-91 season, went all the way to 94-95 season. So that's 5 years at MSU as a guard. He did pick up that one game as a first-year freshman, so we get the full 5 years there. But his points per game, it went up every year. Started at 15.8. Goes to 20.1, 24.3, 25.6 points per game. He also put up 4 boards a game for 3 years straight. I mean, I know that doesn't sound like a lot of boards, but when you think about the position that he played, I find that very impressive stat there. Despite not being in the top 10 in games played at MSU, he is the all-time leader in field goals with 866 plus attempts, 1,791. He is the all-time leader in three-pointers with 331 and three-point percentage. So he had the long-range shot there. He is fourth in free throws all-time made, and he is number 1 in free throw percentage, which makes sense to go along with the three-point percentage. The guy could straight up ball it and put it in. He is as Rollo kind of mentioned, he's the all-time points leader in Michigan State history with 2,531 points. I mean, that's a big stat considering that he's not even in top 10 for games played. That makes it even more impressive. And he's second all time in points per game average with 21.3. He trails only Mike Robinson in that. From Robinson was back in the 1970s, so we're talking a little bit of a different game back then. He made the NCAA tournament 4 out of 5 seasons there, which is a very impressive stat. He finished his career second all time in scoring by Big Ten players. So not just dominant in Michigan, but you just look at the whole picture there. That's top 10 all time for or second all time for Big Ten scoring. And of course, he was a first team All American, and he was also named the NABC College Player of the Year. So Ray, I know you're very familiar with Sean. You told me you were hanging out with him not too long ago. So what are your thoughts on his career? And I know you got one season in there with him.
Yes, sir. So Sean passed the keys to me, obviously, kind of showed me how to be a college player. And obviously, clearly, that I called it the fact where my shot became much better because I was a scorer coming in as an All-American player. Sean is the staple to me at Michigan State. I still don't think he gets enough credit. But if you're talking about just what he did 4 years at the institution and in the Big Ten, he is the all-time great. If you look at his numbers, I call him the Steph Curry of the college generation before, obviously, he's diagnosed with cancer where that didn't carry over to the pro career. But he's the first person ever I've seen get kicked out of practice for not missing the shots for an hour and a half, 2 hours of the practice. That's how good he can shoot. Judd Heco kicked out of practice. When he got drafted, they said Sean's rapid jump shot was so good he could shoot a quarter in a slot machine. And you got to think, guys, he was not the greatest ball handler at that time, but for him to come off screens, the condition and game planning for was unbelievable. And I'm going to share another story for Bobby Knight to say he's the best shooter outside of Steve Holford. He feel like he was better than Steve Holford. This dude was amazing, y'all. I witnessed it firsthand. This guy was absolutely incredible. We all know the great game he had at U of M, right? 3 points in the first half, come out on a twisted ankle, ended up with 33 in the second half. And Dick Vitale said, hey, this is probably, if not one of the greatest players to ever come out of the Big Ten. So I think it's undisputed, no disrespect to any other player, but Sean Vesper, hands down, Pound is the best player. And no disrespect to Magic either. I know Irvin really well. We talk about based on numbers. I think we just missed one more piece to get to that level where we got upset his senior year to Weber State, and that still kills me. But I think we had a chance to really go far that senior year for us to get compete for a national title.
So you mentioned his cancer. I was going to ask you about that. I know we didn't know about it when he was in the NBA because he kept that on the low down and he didn't want that as an excuse or anything. So what were your thoughts when we did find out years later that that's what was going on? Like, this is a friend of yours. Like, what were your thoughts when you found out?
It just showed his integrity, his humility, and not making excuses. I mean, you can't go from player of the year and go into the league and just say, hey, he's a boss. And I think once they put that, on the atmosphere, he had to obviously defend, the legacy and the things that he's done in the game. And so we were shocked because we couldn't tell. Obviously, he still was physically fit. And so just dealing with that, just trying to find his groove back and still sustain, Olympic career. I think he got 4 years in the NBA, and obviously had played for some powerhouse teams. So, but it's the what if story, right? What if he was healthy? We could be talking about him like Steph Curry or Chris Jackson at that particular time. So, again, just players that I've seen that put in the work and see that work carry over to the court and to have it ride from him based on the health condition was really tough. But the way he held himself and his integrity, it's very inspirational.
Well, let's move on to our final player tonight. And go ahead, Dion.
Leave the best for last, okay? Challenge myself a little bit. With Scott Skiles out of LaPorte, Indiana. Scott, he was originally known for his offensive ability in putting the ball into the hoop. As a point guard, he was a combo guard who averaged 27.4 points his senior year and was the Big Ten Player of the Year. His historic senior season put him third all time in points in school history with 2,145 points. Skiles also finished his career second in both steals and assists in school history with 645 assists and 175 steals. When he got drafted first round, 22nd overall by the Bucks. Kind of struggled his first 2 years in the NBA, but really improved on the expansion team Orlando Magic in their first season, where he averaged 17 points per game and 9 assists, and also won Most Improved Player of the Year.
So, Ray, with Scott, is he the best passer we're talking about tonight? And, it's not like Jason Williams, the great white hype here, but, he came out and he played a solid game.
Yeah, so Scott Skiles, I think he's probably one of the most underrated players because, again, you got to think when he averaged those points, there was no three-point line. So if that 27 probably could be easily 35 points, right? And you're talking about his whole career, there was no three-point line, and Scott Skiles was shooting, bombs like Steph Curry back in that tape. And then from a assist standpoint, he still has the NBA record, 30 assists. No one's going to beat that record. You talk about Jason Kidd, right? So, to me, arguably, if you just talk about numbers and the errors, I would probably, Scott could arguably be the second greatest player to me to come out of there based on no three-pointers and obviously being game planned for. The game was more physical and the paint was packed, right? So he had not only to be the distributor, but he also had to be a scorer as well. So that's kind of like double valuable. So I just held my hat off to him because the league was just so physical in those early 80s and late 80s when he played the game. So I have a great regard for Scotty. Scotty was tough as nails. He can go through a personal tragedy from what Jay Heathcote told us, and you wouldn't think he was going through those things, and he'd come out there and kick your tail and let you know about it too. So Scott Skiles is the real deal.
Well, let's move into our vote tonight. Cannot pick your own. Brian, you're in my upper corner. Who are you taking?
Well, I mean, you convinced me. I got Rashford. I mean, that's just yeah, he's just overwhelming.
All right. Dion.
Yeah. Sean. I gotta go with Sean. Sean, man. That's crazy.
And obviously I can't pick my own, so I can't pick Sean. Good arguments, but I think Rollo. I think I'm going to go with you with Steve Smith. You nailed it. He's second in points, so points are what win games. So I'm going with points. I'm not a defensive guy here. So one for Steve Smith. How about you, Rollo?
3-time All-American, NCAA championship winner, Mateen Cleaves.
Okay. And Ray, we come to you. You sticking with Sean, or you going with somebody else?
No, it's not even close. It's not even close. I mean, to win a championship, you got to have a team, and you got to think Mateen Cleaves had, an All-American on his team, first teamer. Charlie Burke, honorable mention. So, Sean had less, and he did more. And obviously, the talent level guys again was nowhere near the level that we had. The Fab Five, we had Big Dog Glenn Robinson. The Big Ten was absolutely incredible stack, and for him to be able to accomplish that night in and night out, even when you talk about the Jimmy Jackson, Ohio State Buckeyes, right, the Kelby Cheneys of the world. I mean, this guy just did it every single night. He was triple team, all that. So I'm going with Sean, hands down. And then I would put Steve Smith. That's my big brother as well. I'll put him 2, and I'm putting Scott Skiles 3. Then I will have my team, fall in that area.
So it's turnovers. That's why he finished 4th, Brian.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a win tonight for Sean Respert. Was my guy, so I get first question in our Q&A. Nice job, guys. We'll go me, Rollo, Dion, Brian. So, Ray, I want to ask you. I'm just getting to know you through Facebook here and stuff, but I've been able to tell already, and of course, what I've been reading about you preparing for this, that faith is a big part of your life. So, I want to ask you, how has that helped you in your mentoring, like maybe with the Train Up a Champion program and your athletic experiences?
Yeah, so, honestly, a person of faith as a young person, but not truly understanding that until I got into my adult life and retired, where I just took my faith to a different dimension, a different level to have a greater impact. It's always great to talk about the things that we accomplished, but we don't talk about the things where we erred and make mistakes. And so I like to talk about my weaknesses instead of my strengths and how I can inspire some people through the game. And that's kind of like the debate for me. And then going through Train Up a Champion was just life-changing for me as an adult, because if I had those tools, obviously, I feel like I could have even done even more as a person, but also as a a collegiate athlete and a professional athlete. And the expectations of the background that I come from, it can honestly hinder from you flourishing if you don't have good programs and good things to cultivate your gifts and your talents as a person first, and then an athlete, because of the expectations and the traumas and things that we go through as young people. So that's the number one thing in my life. I don't compromise that. I don't like to talk about myself as a player, but I let my peers talk about me as a player. So when you got Grant Hill, you got Steve Smith, you got the Penny Hardaways and the Vespers, they're going to tell my story. And so, and I think the things that I went through coming to college, it hindered from me doing what I needed to do. Judd Heathcote said out of his face, you guys can Google, he said I was the next great guard, period. And honestly, I didn't know that he was going to retire as fast as I thought I would have had him the rest of my career. But obviously, I still was fortunate and blessed to get Coach Izzo. But there was two different game plans. Most people didn't see the real Weathers play. If you look at these deals that you have now, which is I played in the CBA, and if I was in the G League, we had the TV and the media and all that. I would have signed a 5-year deal easily, guys. And I say that humbly. But my peers going to tell my story, what type of player I really was. And Sean, prime example, would do that. So I can get Sean on you guys' show and let him talk about it.
Ray, you were recruited, you said, by Judd, and then you wound up playing under Tom Izzo. Was it ever in your mind to transfer when Judd Heathcote left, or was it because Tom Izzo was already in place that you was like, hey, I'm going to play for this guy?
No, it's obviously transfer for me, because I know for Judd Heathcote, just like a Bobby Knight, Judd wouldn't come to your town to watch you play. He wouldn't come to an open gym to watch you play, not a real game. And for him to take that time to come down to to Jackson, to personally see me, to personally meet me on a regular basis, it told a lot about him. Like the top coaches at that time, the Dean Smiths, the Bobby Knights, they sent their staff out to do a lot of that unless you were really talented. So I made history because I was the second Prop 48 player to ever come through Michigan State. Pig Miller was the first one, and he said he would never do it again. So he had a game plan for me. I knew all the guys that went pro from there to the NBA, and that kind of sold me on going there. I tell people all the time when we grew up, the ESPN media coverage was regional. If I went to UCLA and Georgetown, coming from where I come from, my parents would have probably got an opportunity to see me, nationally televised, because it was not that way back then. So, and my story with Michigan, I was about to be their first proper position 48 player in history as well. I flipped a quarter, literally a quarter between Michigan State and Michigan, man. So if I just really looked at my career, no disrespect to my Spartan family, I'm transparent that my game suited the amazing blue guys. I had an opportunity under Steve Fisher. I would have started right off the rip, regardless of who would have been playing Fab Five or not. Jimmy Keenan, Ray Jackson, my guys. I just talked to Ray Jackson today. So, but no disrespect to Coach Izzo as well. Obviously, been assistant for 12 years, trying to find his niche, find his way as a head coach himself. Inheriting a team that was left from Judd. And coming out his first 2 years, you have to understand to win 17, 15 games in the Big Ten, gentlemen, it's very, very difficult, okay? And we went, I think, 17-12, and then I think I went 18-11, no Big Ten tournament during my era. So we was a bubble team right there to push, but the system kind of changed and stuff like that. So, but if I could go back now, I felt like for me to really flourish as a player, I definitely would have made that step and transfer somewhere else.
Yeah, just like Mike, I had a question about your program, but I kind of want to switch it up and learn more so about your faith. Was that something that has always been big to you as you were raised, or that's something you were kind of established as an adult and going through things?
Yeah, so honestly, you got people just religious, and I'm not religious. I heard a lot, but what really opened my eyes as a young person, honestly, if you guys follow the story, my brother was murdered in high school by his best friend. He was 16, I was 15, 11 months older than me, and just kind of thinking about, his eternal state. And so when you're going through those situations, obviously there was always a seed planted from, my grandparents and people down the road. But when I went through my career and just being very angry, not satisfied where I feel like I could accomplish it, playing in the NBA, a lot of my peers are there, and just not wondering why I wasn't getting the break. But none of those things made me happy, gentlemen, until I really found my faith in Christ Jesus. And my life, he just changed my life completely. And I'm still a work in progression. So I felt like if I could have had my faith early in my career, I feel like I could even flourish more. And I tell guys all the time, use that platform to share your faith and what you stand for. And a lot of people won't allow you to do that. But I feel like if you got that stuff in position in place, I think you can succeed even higher than what you could by not having faith.
Yeah. Well, Ray, you mentioned it earlier. You were part of one of the better rivalries in college sports. Michigan State Spartans, Michigan Wolverines. What can you say about that rivalry? I know you played them, I believe, 6 times during your career, if I counted right. So what can you say about that rivalry?
I know my first one, Jahiko had some choice words, was about to get arrested when we going to Crash Arena and we getting ice snowballs thrown at him, man. So I knew right then off the rip, I said, okay, this is a real rivalry. But just the atmospheres, guys. I'm gonna do a storytelling real quick, guys. Let's make this fun. So I remember, obviously, we were getting ready to play Michigan. The Fab Five was there, and they had some new uniforms that we have not seen before. They had the blue one as from away game, then the white one. So we're coming through the tunnel just like this, and we they're jumping up and down. We all hyped up, and they have to go first. I never forget they had the baggiest like windbreaker uniforms we ever seen, and they snatched those things off, and they had the gold uniforms, and the shorts was baggier. Our shorts, you still could see our quads and our thighs and hamstrings. They had the backpacks on with the Hirachis. With Eric Snow looking at us, and we say, man, we need to get some green pre-tape. We need to get some new stuff, man, because those guys look so clean. And just the rivalry, we know a lot of each other from, the inner city, from Detroit, Lansing, or guys from Ohio. So, oh, man, it was super, super intense, man, super intense. And the preparation, can you guys imagine what it was like for Tom Izzo? It was crazy, guys. So it was a lot of fun memories. I'm still cool, like I said, with Maurice Taylor, a lot of those players, man, to see them going to success. So I always say, if I'm not rooting for my Michigan State, I would root for Michigan all day long.
So how did your documentary come about, and tell our listeners a bit about it?
Yeah, so it was not scripted or planned. It was a guy that I knew out in California that was off into the movie industry, and they wanted to start filming about minor league basketball. Obviously CBA. You have Phil Jackson, George Karl, just the tradition of that league growing to make players go off. You got John Starks, Craig Elo. And so it was a quote that came out. They were trying to attract the players that was really scoring, really flourishing over the past 20 plus years. And Mark Cuban was a huge fan of mine that talked about, he said Ray Weather's probably the best scorer that I've seen in 20 years because I could score in bunches. They looked up my analytics. Every time I shot 20 shots in the game, I scored over 40-something points. And so they wanted to do a film about that. When the buzz came out, that story got connected to a guy named Mr. Randy Holloway out of Detroit, Michigan, called Arte Productions. And he knew about my journey, knew about my story. I never met the guy, but obviously his brother was murdered as well, and it was connected to some Michigan State player. I can't mention that guy's name. So long story short, I had flown to town. I think I could have been doing a camping clinic. His production team came and say, "Hey, Ray, man, I heard about this documentary with minor league. We just want to come interview you." I said, "Yeah." So they bring the cameras, freelancing, and next thing you know, as my story was being told, they were in shock and said, "Hey, can we just start following around maybe a week?" And I thought it was a little weird. And I'm like, yeah. And next thing you know, the film just kept going over and over. And they said, man, you really had to, weather some storms. We should create a documentary called Weathering the Storm. And I was just catching because of my last name. And next thing you know, gentlemen, I was able to go through a healing process. And I had almost, I think, about 1,000 people that showed up to my premiere. And next thing you know, the movie Hoop Dreams, I'm sure you guys remember the movie Hoop Dreams. That organization that made a contract with them out of Chicago signed me to a deal. They were promoting it. We got a distribution deal. And I inspired, you mentioned Kenny Anderson earlier. Him and Steve Smith was the two top guys ever for me coming out of high school, right? I got a chance to meet Kenny Anderson when he was coaching the CBA. Just told him, hey, man, outside of Steve Smith, you my dude. And so we stayed connected. My documentary actually inspired, Kenny Anderson to come out with his documentary called Mr. Jibbs. So you just don't know how you can impact people by telling your story, going through some things we had to go through as people and athletes, man. So I was really fortunate to be able to do that.
One more each with Rollo, Dion, Brian.
Ray, what's the most memorable what's the most memorable memory that you have from playing college basketball? Whether it be a moment, whether it be a shot you made, what's the most memorable?
That's a great question, brother. So listen, I will never ever forget this, guys. So Indiana, playing against Indiana, you play at Assembly Hall. You got 15, 20 boosters from Michigan State, and everything's red and white, okay? So just having that experience, because you hear all the stories with Bobby Knight, he's never speaks to players ever after, game, win or loss, and he come out last for the game. So just realizing how big he was, he's 6'6", big guy. My senior year, on senior night, we beat Indiana by 18, 20 points. I had 20 points that game, and I never forget this. I hear Weathers. And I'm looking around, and my guys, I think Matina or Thomas K said, man, Bobby Knight is calling your name. And people started like flashing cameras. So he started walking towards me, and I was kind of like in shock. He put his arm around me just like this. He was like, man, you are tough, choice words. Had a magnificent career. You never gave me a shot to come to Indiana. But he said, you're an NBA player. You never got a chance to really be who you are, and I know what you are. He said, tell that Tom Izzo that choice words, if he has any problems and he don't mess you to help you get to the NBA, I'm going to put my hands on him. He literally said that, guys, and gave me a hug and walked this. I remember I was in the front page of Detroit Free Press and the Lansing Journal with this picture, and then the President McPherson from our university during our bank was like, he's never seen Bobby Knight. Everybody knows he's never talked to players after the game, but to glorify my name the way he did, and the respect he had for me, said what I stand for the program. And I'll never forget that. That meant a lot coming from Mr. Bobby Knight to talk about me in that capacity. So that was cool.
Yeah, Rallo stole my question. But so I'll change it. What is your most memorable moment in the NBA?
So listen, this is amazing. Great question too. So I'm obviously from Jackson, Michigan, and I was a bad boy Pistons fan, man. Even though I like Magic Johnson for sure, and obviously the Chicago Bulls, but Isaiah Thomas was my guy, and Joe Dumars. And so growing up, me and my brothers, my oldest brother Jeremy Hester and Ken, we used to be like, wow, it'd be so great one day to be a Piston. We wanted to be Isaiah and Joe Dumars. Okay, you fast forward 1997, I got Doug Collins coming, potentially about to get drafted by a couple of teams, and I felt like it was going to happen. But I got signed to go to the Pistons, end up signing and meeting Joe Dumars, signed with his agent, and I'm talking across the table as I'm talking to y'all, and he's telling me about how to guard Michael Jordan, all these incredible stories. And here it is. I put my Piston uniform, my first game ever, after veteran camp is over with. I got Grant Hill, my veteran, Rick Mahorn is on the team, and I get ready to go out to the tunnel, and he gave me all his Adidas. He took care of me. I run out to the court with Charles O'Bannon and Scott Pollard and said, wow, here it is. My dream as a little kid. I'm a Detroit Piston, got signed, and Joe Dumars is my mentor, man. So that right there was life-changing for me, just to be able to touch that and taste that. And then honestly, I would say actually playing an NBA game with the Phoenix Suns, having my cup of coffee and getting real close to Penny Hardaway guys was incredible, guys.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, Ray, I'm going to drop some names here. Antonio Smith, Mateen Cleaves, Thomas Kelly, Morris Peterson, John Garrett Baglia. These were your guys that you led in that 96-97 season. So what did this group mean to you?
A lot. It's funny, as I said, again, if Mateen is healthy, and it takes a while because the backcourt is so vital to the success of the team. You understand? And I think it's the engine that makes the ship go. But if you just look at paper and us meshing together, gelling together, we had a stretch when we started off the season. We went off 8-2. Then we had a mishap during the middle where we lost 5 to 6 games that were, winnable games. And then we finished strong at the end. So to me, that team was a 20-plus team, a Big Ten championship team, because that's the team that left and actually won it my last year, right? So those guys, I just talked to Antonio Smith. We still said on paper, if we could have meshed together, we could have really, really made some noise. And another thing most people didn't know, a lot of people thought I went to the NBA hardship, guys. Imagine me coming back, averaging 15.6 Big Ten play, right? 14 overall, okay? And I'm only playing 27 minutes a game, all right? I have to defend Andre Rulewich, Kawan Garris, Bobby Jackson, those guys playing 37 minutes a game, but their numbers are very close to mine in Big Ten play. If I come back my senior year and get my 4th year back, right, I'm averaging 24, 25 points a game. I probably get MVP of the Big Ten, right? But if I don't go, Charlie Bell probably never come to Michigan State. So it's a lot of conversations I'm going to talk about in my movie about this. I think it's going to shock a lot of people. But that team to me was really dear to my heart. I'm still upset because John Garvey, he went Mr. Basketball over me. I was ranked as #1 player in the state when I came out. But just the bond that we had, trying to deal with that, we left our mark on how those kids had to work, how they had to get ready, and then obviously when I left, they started to have this ship. They ran with it. So here we are. Michigan State is one of the top 3 programs in all of college basketball.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you coming on and giving us your time. Honored to talk MSU with you.
Yes, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to remind everybody, make sure that you check out that documentary movie called Weathering the Storm, the story of Ray Weathers. It's going to be good, people. Go check that out when it's available for you. Remind also everybody, hit like and subscribe. We'll see y'all next time. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. God bless.
God bless, guys.